Welcome to Hot Takes Happy Hour.
Hi, everybody.
Wait, everybody's joining us, all our peeps. Welcome back from Down Under.
Oh, thank you so much. I miss it. I miss the weather. Oh my God. It's been beautiful sunny weather in Australia all
It's a
last week.
summertime there.
I know. And here in Washington, D.C., first of all, it's Washington, D.C., where you are, which is the only upside. And, my husband and the dogs too. But rain, misery, dirty snow, the Potomac full of sewage. Oh my God.
And they
Yeah.
say that it's nothing about the drinking water, but I can't believe that's true. So I'm like, don't use the tap water.
We're using our tap water if you don't.
I'm using the tap water, but filter, through a filter. So not just plain. Okay. Well, I call this the Iran will we or won't we edition. Should we start with Iran and then we could talk about Board of Peace and residuals? I mean, that's what really everybody's focused on. And, even though I don't think we're going to see action maybe in the next day or two, everybody's like, the media is like gearing up, like, how do you see this playing out?
So the president said today, literally while I was sitting having makeup slathered on at NBC, and hence, hello everybody.
You look very glam.
You look glamorous, darling. Anyway, but as I was slathering on, I heard him saying something in Georgia about how the Iranians have less than 10 days. Now, what does that mean? You and I have been talking about the fact that next Tuesday we've got the State of the Union.
Yeah.
Does he act before the State of the Union or afterwards?
God, I hope not.
My guess is
it's not just because my brother's here and I want to enjoy his company. Hi, Seth. He's upstairs. I asked him if he wanted to make a cameo, but he said no, thank you. But I really want to enjoy that time and with him, but also I really do think, and we could talk more about it. I think even if he doesn't go to Congress, I think he should at least lay out a case for it before he does it.
Well, that would be good.
Before the American people.
If he used the State of the Union, that would be good. I agree with you about that. So let's talk about a couple of things. I just had a meeting I can't talk about with in any detail, but with a senior official from the region.
I know.
Right, because everybody's in town because of the
Board of Peace meeting.
Right, exactly. So anyway, one of the things he said, which I think was interesting, is look, he was asked about war in Iran. What do you think? And he said, look, this is all on Iran. They're not taking this seriously. They are negotiating with one hand, and at the same time, the Ayatollah Khamenei is putting out these outrageous, statements, refusing to do absolutely anything on either the nuclear or the missile or the terrorism. So, this is just not acceptable.
Where is Trump now? Because the negotiations were supposed to be on all, not only the nuclear, but also on the missiles and the proxies as well. But then Iran said, we're only going to negotiate on the nuclear. And I thought the talks were more contained.
Look, the problem is one that you and I discuss all the time, which is that the space between the president and his negotiators is ever widening. And yes, I think he talks to them not infrequently, but at the same time, he has said they need to do these three things. He's not going to tolerate the usual, oh yeah, we'll talk about maybe to 20% enrichment. He's not interested in that.
Well, the president is no enrichment, but why do we keep seeing reports that, maybe there'll be a little enrichment?
Look,
Yanni.
Well, but you know why? Because the JCPOA gave them enrichment, and so they don't want to give it up. And so this is what we see. Witkoff actually offered them that, if you recall, at the beginning of the negotiations. So I suspect that it's coming from there. It's from people who have absolutely no understanding of what's going on. We are going to do a nuclear agreement with the Saudis that eventually will allow some kind of enrichment.
A civil nuclear agreement called a 123, right?
Yeah.
That they have with the UAE.
Right, that we have with the UAE, but the UAE is not allowed enrichment. The idea that we're going to let Iran have enrichment, Iran that has violated the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, killed more Americans until 9/11 had killed more Americans than any other terrorist, than any other sponsor of terrorism.
Well, and the Saudis, I don't
thing.
know that the agreement with the Saudis is official. They're, in theory, they're going to do an agreement, but I don't know that the agreement is set as stone. And the Saudis are like, you know what? If it's cheaper, we don't have to enrich. We don't really care. We want the power. When you're using nuclear power, it doesn't matter if you enrich or not, unless you have nuclear weapons ambitions. And that's why, you know, who knows if the Saudis really want a nuclear weapon? Who knows if the Saudis or the UAE have a nuclear weapon?
No, they don't. The Saudis do not have a nuclear weapon. The Emirates do not have a nuclear weapon. I would stake a lot on that, at least right now. But again, let's underscore, you cannot allow the Iranians to have an enrichment capability and not allow their neighbors who have peaceful civil, they're law-abiding. They're law-abiding neighbors.
I agree.
So this is all up and down. But, what I was starting to say before is, the president said a few weeks ago, we're locked and loaded. He wasn't locked and loaded then. He is locked and loaded now. We have, I don't know whether our viewers have seen how much material we have in
there are
the
a lot
region.
of assets there, yeah.
It is. We got a lot of stuff there.
And we have more coming. Like there's another, having one aircraft carrier is a big deal. Having two is, you don't do all that unless you're prepared to do something. What's the goal in your opinion? Do you think it's regime change, or do you think it's to, get rid of what they didn't get rid of before on the nuclear program and the missile program? You think it's... And when you say regime change, is it a new Venezuela type, or is it like really just,
Nobody's telling me, at least. I wish I knew. No, I don't think it's Venezuela, but I think there are. Look, what we were seeing a few weeks ago when the president was ready to go with a much more limited strike, and Benjamin Netanyahu asked him to hold up, said, "We're not ready. We can't repel this." What we saw then was that the Iranian people were across all classes, across all sectors, across all ethnicities, not Persians and Arabs and others. They were all out in the streets. And at that point, the regime was teeter-tottering. I think the question that's hard for people like you and me to answer, and probably, frankly, hard for our intelligence community to answer too, is that moment gone? What we've seen in the last couple of days is that on the 40-day anniversary of the beginning of these demonstrations and on the beginning of the wanton murder of Iranian citizens by their government, we are seeing the end of a 40-day mourning period. And so people are starting to commemorate those, and that's bringing out demonstrators into the street again. And so that may provide an indicator of just how much enthusiasm there still is to topple this evil, evil regime.
Yesterday on, I don't know, some radio show, I don't remember what it was, but there wasn't, maybe it was BBC or something, but there was an Iranian journalist that has a podcast, an Iranian, I think it's called the Iran Podcast. And she said that, when President Trump was like, help is on the way, people really Iranians really believed him. And now when they see that help was not on the way for them, they realize that, yes, maybe Trump, if, he was going to go to, war with the regime anyway, that might help the people. But they realized that was more about getting leverage for these negotiations, and also to get, the assets there if he wanted to strike. What she said was that it's really not about the Iranian people. It's about the U.S. own interests.
Well, first of all, he's the president of the United States, not the president of Iran.
I understand, but he did make a big show about help is on the way. And when he said we were locked and loaded, that wasn't about helping the protesters. What he said is what I'm saying.
So, I mean, look, I can see an argument for that perspective. I can see an argument for a perspective in which he is now ready and willing and able. And this is not the kind of armada. This is not the kind of military buildup that is just about striking a couple of nuclear sites.
Not a one and done. not like June 12th, not the 12-day war. We're still, I was with Stephen Cook, our friend, a few weeks ago, and we're still looking for something else better than calling it the 12-day war. Is there anything better? Put it in the comments.
It was called Operation Midnight Hammer for the U.S. That was the official title of it, which is very, very sexy and dramatic. This is going to be right, and it was Operation Midnight Hammer. To be fair, I think this is going to be a more long-term, more
I would say that.
And
okay. Yeah. Sorry. Finish the thought. Sorry.
Yeah. Look, one of the things, and I've said this before to you on in our discussions, and I've said it probably before to our listeners as well. It's important to understand that you cannot think about this in in normal terms. The Iranian government lives in a world of its own creation. And this is part of the problem for the negotiators. While the foreign minister, Araghchi, and several others may have a better sense of the reality and truth of the outside world, a lot of the elite leadership inside Iran actually believes a set of things that have nothing to do with reality about their military capability, about their sustainability, about their popularity. And so that is leading them also to make a bad calculus here, because they could just cave and preserve themselves, and Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff would go along with it.
Look, they did it during the JCPOA, and look how long they staved off nuclear. I think Trump's going to do something. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion because the Iranians don't seem to be in any mood to deal. I think it really just all depends on whether the Iranians are going to use this time to figure out some kind of capitulation that suits them, or they're just playing for time period. So
no idea. The good, perfect questions.
And just quickly, and so we can move on. What about going to Congress and kind of, he's definitely outside of a couple of tweets and saying bad things will happen. I don't think when you just said this could be a much longer, prolonged, sustained campaign, I don't think he's really prepared the American people for us possibly going to war with Iran, and certainly has not kind of, while I think a lot of people would buy in in Congress, I don't think there's been much effort to get any buy-in from Congress.
So, two things. It's funny because I talked to you earlier today. Then I saw a friend of mine who was on the Democratic staff of the House Foreign Affairs Committee when I was on Capitol Hill. So, we're both 28, 29 years old. And I told her what you had said, which, and she said, not a chance that Congress will go for it. But she reminded me of something more important. And if everybody will allow me an asterisk, sometimes I have Stephen, my husband, who's a lawyer, come and lecture my class at Georgetown on the War Powers Act to help help my students understand what it really means. And what he always says to them is, Congress doesn't want to vote on this. They'll say they do, but they won't. And what he'll do is
if not given the chance, they'll say you should have given us the chance.
He'll point them back to the 1991 vote on George H.W. Bush's Kuwait War, right? In which our friend Joe Biden, unbelievably, voted the wrong way and was excoriated for it. Then, having done so, 10 years later, he votes to support the Iraq War and was excoriated for it. Ditto Hillary Clinton, we all remember the Hillary-Obama race. And so, they're all going to go, yeah, consult Congress, war powers, blah, blah, blah. They don't want it at all.
I mean, if we had a functioning government that could see beyond their own ideological points of view, biases, I think everyone in Congress should debate it and vote to do it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to the Board of Peace today. I think we've discussed before the committees that were formed for the Gaza portion of it could have some merit, but that's not really what's holding up development in Gaza. What's holding up is the disarmament and some kind of international stabilization force But I think what people are talking about is less about Gaza, because that has very little to do with the board of peace, and more like, is the president trying to supplant the United Nations?
Oh my God. He might think he's supplanting the United
Yeah.
Nations, but he ain't. There's not a chance. What is so let me just dispense with the Board of Peace very quickly.
Yeah.
It's BS. There we go. Okay. Now, it's BS. It's Trumpian BS. It's not going to be a pathway to a peace process. It might be a pathway
Anywhere.
to some infusion of cash into Gaza, but even that is highly in doubt because it's not clear how that is going to happen. But part two of this is I had not realized, Elise, and I'm sure you knew this because you're much more on top of the details about this than I am, but the Indonesians, and the president is trying to get people to cough up troops for this international security force. And the Israelis are unhappy. These are countries that don't recognize the state of Israel. There's not a chance they want their soldiers operating on their border. But guess what? The Indonesians said, yeah, we'll give, a couple thousand troops, but we'll only operate with where the IDF is. We won't operate in the part of Gaza where Hamas is. How is disarmament going to happen if you're only willing to operate with the Israelis?
Right. And why do you need them there? You don't.
Exactly. I don't. Had you caught that? Because I thought that was irony.
I didn't.
Irony of ironies. It was in one of the pieces in the Post today or Reuters or somewhere. So yeah, this. It feels like a grift. It looks like a joke. It happened at the old U.S. Institute of Peace, which is now the Donald Trump Institute of Peace. And as much as I want this to be serious because I hate the United Nations, this is not.
Well, and also, I think he's trying to set something up for his post-presidency where he's like, I think it's a grift. I agree.
Yeah.
You can't say anything else. And it's going to be like, remember when, what's his name? Desmond Tutu and, Kofi Annan started the Elders. This is like the new version of that. But,
God.
more lucrative and if you have $1 billion, if you want to give me $1 billion, you can join too. And notably, countries like Norway and, serious European countries are not joining.
Yeah.
So anyway, we can move on. We haven't talked about Munich. What did you make of Rubio's speech?
So a lot of my friends and colleagues and family members liked it a lot. They liked it because fundamentally it hit the Europeans very hard on the things that Europe has done to itself. It put a lot of the onus for the problems that Europe is experiencing and the problems in the alliance on Europe. And I agree with that. And we've talked about that. Right. And we've talked about Europe's disinvestment in NATO over decades. And so, we
and have said, hi, Gina, and have said to his credit, he has gotten Europe to take a look at this more seriously and pony up more money. So yes,
but there's a big but here for me, and this is where I suspect I fall out with some of my conservative allies, and I respect Marco Rubio, and I think he has the chops to give a speech like that. I thought it was a shrewd speech, and that is a very carefully chosen word. I really resented a couple of things, and maybe you guys are going to think, "Oh, Dany, you're always on this." But I'll tell you what they were, and I haven't written about this, but I'm sharing my view now. So, I really resented his descriptions of America as a Christian country.
I felt the same way. We should write something together.
We should. People previously have always used the Judeo-Christian formulation. Maybe Muslims don't like that, but it is a very, very typical formulation for what is the backbone of the ethos and the founding of this country and many others. And it is really important. And I thought it was a deliberate omission. Right. I thought it was a deliberate omission. If I had felt, and I did when I heard it, feel like, okay, maybe you're just being a little paranoid. Then when he took credit for what the United States did in Iran and didn't mention Israel, and took credit for the Gaza piece and didn't mention Israel,
Mm-hmm.
I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this is not a bug. This is a feature. And this is him trying to split the difference between the MAGA Tucker Carlson
Yeah.
creeps, right? And actually, Tucker Carlson isn't MAGA. I shouldn't even say that. Between the Tucker Carlson, JD Vance side of the party, which is all about our Christian roots and blah, blah, blah. And the different, he was trying to walk that line very cleverly, and I was actually offended by it.
Let me broaden that out a bit. How many times did he say civilization, heritage, um, all of that? And what is that? White, Christian, anti-immigration, white Christian nationalist, Ku Klux Klan-y, if you will.
Don't go too far. Don't go
Oh,
too far. Don't make me
well,
defend him having just criticized him. It
Well,
wasn't Ku
anyway,
Klux
it's a
Klan.
very Handmaid's Tale, as I like to say, version of American. And he kept saying about American civilization. And the message to Europe is get on board with it's not enough that you're going to pay more and think about your own defense. But and this is what JD Vance said last year, like, I'm worried about the erasure of your civilization. Fuck you.
Oh,
I'm
you just got
sorry.
us banned again on YouTube. Damn it, Elise. No
Oh,
swearing.
I'm sorry.
No,
Mom, I'm sorry.
listen,
But you know what? Maybe there was just once and they'll miss it. Although I did enunciate pretty quickly. But you know what? Everyone is entitled to their own civilization. It used to be about value. Anyway, whatever.
lost
We're
me,
going to,
baby. You lost me, and I'll tell you why.
what?
The problem here is there's a very good way to say this, right? Here's that
Not,
speech.
he didn't use the word democracy once.
Here's the way to say that, actually, I believe in the traditions of Western civilization. Actually, I applaud the evolution of Europe and the United States. Actually, I believe in women's rights. I
So do,
believe in I've and I think and I'm saying I believe in the rights of religious minorities. I believe in the rights of minorities. I believe that those Western civilizational values are better than the values of our enemies. And if he had said
I do
that, I would
too.
have been and if he had said that, I would have said, "Amen, brother." But he didn't. He hinted at the things that you're talking about, and while I
Yeah.
wouldn't go as far as you, I still was troubled by it, and so, yeah, I guess I get a demerit in the Trump White House.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was a better tone, but towards the end, everyone's like, yes, yes, yes. And I think towards the end of the day in Europe, people were like, well, you know what? The tone is better, but the message ain't really much different than Vance.
He's still got a
Um,
standing ovation.
he did, but I don't know, if he came back for an encore, if he would get the standing ovation again. But I think that he did. I thought it was an artful and shrewd speech. I agree. And listen, I think that both the U.S. and Europe have to realize that they may disagree on some things, but I think what the Europeans might have taken away from it was the relationship used to be based on values and interests, and now it's going to be more based on interests for a while. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, we did board of peace, Iran, Munich. Let's quickly tick off, because I know you don't want to talk about it very long. What do you think about the election? I know you talked about it on Meet the Press today. Trump talking about federalizing the elections. We saw what happened in Georgia with the voter rolls and the voting machines. He's talking about taking over the voting in at least 15 places, insinuating he may deploy the DHS to polling locations. And even, some Republicans are pushing back on this too, like in states like Oklahoma and Kentucky, they're being like, you know what? We're not giving you our voter rolls. Calm the hell down.
Calm down, Mr. President. Look,
Yeah.
I'll repeat what I said on Meet the Press. Well, and I'll add to it. What the president needs in Georgia is turnout, right? We have basically there are 4,800 or however many candidates. It'll probably end up with 2 Republicans and a Democrat at the top, and then they go to a runoff. The idea that Republicans are going to turn out for a message that relates to the 2020 elections is nuts. Nuts, period, end of story. Sorry. Second of all, I don't like the fact that we've all taken. I need that water.
Sorry, I was thinking about that. You need to have some water near you or a
No,
cocktail. We need to get back to
no,
this.
I know. I was just racing in the door though. But no, coming back to this, I don't like the fact that all the media has jumped when the Democrats have set the affordability agenda, quote unquote. On the other hand, the president needs to talk about the economy. That's why people are mad at him. He needs to explain to people how he wants to fix things. He needs to talk to people about the crime issues and the other issues that are going to get them to the polls. And
Mm.
if he's doing his usual, wool gathering, daydreaming, Fidel Castro 3-hour speeches about the stopping the steal, people aren't going to turn out. Republicans aren't interested in that crap anymore. And that's the problem that he has. And so, yes, absolutely, deploy the president, get up the enthusiasm. But if he talks about BS, you're not going to get.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, we don't have to talk about it now. We will talk about it in the future. But you said Fidel Castro. There are some interesting reports about Cuba being the next, that there are talks with the Cubans going on. We'll save that for next week. The question is this, when he's talking about like taking over voting machines and we're deploying ICE and all this stuff, is this, election denialism, or is this part of, if he does lose, if the Republicans do lose, is he setting us up to say this is not a free and fair election? I will say, he's talking a lot. I'm just curious. He is talking a lot about immigrant voting, and we have to we're having ICE at the polls because we can't have immigrants voting. His own administration just came out with an analysis that said 0.2 of immigrants, 0.02, percent of the voting, it's not really a problem. Okay? Immigrants voting. It's not a problem. So don't threaten to have ICE at the polls so you're worried about Latinos coming out and being rounded up with ICE. That's really what this is about. Okay? You don't need ICE at the polls. I'm sorry. Immigrants are not going to vote. And illegal immigrants, illegal migrants, aliens, whatever the hell you want to call them, they're not going out to vote either. So I agree with you.
I don't know what those stats are because I haven't seen them, but I agree that it's not something that is appropriate to talk about any more than it was ever appropriate for Black Panthers to be at polling places in Pennsylvania, than it was appropriate for union reps to be at polling places intimidating
Agreed.
people. I don't
Agreed.
like that. And
Agreed. Should be a free zone. It should be and you know what? We've talked about this before with like Don Lemon and all of this stuff. I think should be some free zones from any politics. And that's churches, schools, hospitals, voting.
Amen. Teachers unions. That would be a change in our nation. That would be amazing. But yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
No, there should be no politics in any of that. You should be able to like go to church. You should be able to do anything.
Synagogue.
Religious, health-wise. What?
I said synagogue too, Handmaid's Tale, Elise.
Yeah, synagogue, any religious worshiping, mosque, whatever. Synagogue. I only said that because it was a protest at a church. I don't think there should be protests at churches.
Of course.
Anyway,
Can I say one last thing about this?
Yeah.
I don't think the Democrats going to win. This is a plus 5 bajillion Republican seat, so I don't think that's the motivation. I actually think this is part of Trump's mind and now there's this bad word. I need to think of a new word. His obsession with the 2020 election. Let's call it that.
I disagree, but we are
Well, we'll see.
wont
We'll
to do
see how
that.
the vote comes out, and then I'll say I told you so. Aha!
Or I will.
Okay.
And it's
Everybody
not
keep us
just
honest.
Georgia. He's talking about, the Republicans should federalize the elections in a lot of states. He's
Yeah.
afraid of losing the election. And back to what you had said, start talking about the economy.
Right. That's what he
Stupid.
needs to do.
Okay. Colbert. We really disagree on this.
Right. He's a lying son of a bitch.
No. You
And a
said to me
partisan
yesterday,
asshole.
we were on the phone, and you said to me that this law has been in, that for 20 years, they've had this rule. It is true that for 20 years, talk shows and late night programs were included in the category of, you know what, they don't have to have the exception rule. Explain the rule. I'm not good at explaining it.
All right. So part of what people are confused about it is that for those of us who are slightly older, we remember the weird fairness rule, which wasn't a rule, right? Which was
if you have a Democrat, you have to have a Republican.
No, it was even stupider than that, actually. And the rule was, and it wasn't a rule. It was just a tradition that if a public network, so remember, not cable TV, but a public
O&O, as they
network,
call it.
they carried a movie with Fred Thompson in it, and Fred Thompson was
I
running for
remember
office.
that.
And he
Law
was
and
in the
Order.
movie for about 4 minutes. No, it wasn't even Law and Order. It was a movie. And he was in it for about 4 minutes. And the government demanded
Thanks, Gene.
that they give his political opponent equal time on the network.
In the movie.
Not in the movie, but just like on the network to blither at some point. That rule is gone. That doesn't exist anymore. This one is a law. It is the Communications Act of 1934, and it says, if any licensee shall permit any person who is legally qualified candidate for any public office to use a broadcasting station, he shall afford equal opportunities to all other such candidates for that office in the use of such broadcasting station. Now, again, that does not apply to a legitimate news show. So if ABC News covers candidate A for 5 minutes, candidate B cannot come back and say, you talked about candidate A, now talk about me. But Colbert is part of the entertainment division, not part of the news division, right?
But for 20 years, late night talk shows, and I guess daytime talk shows were thought to be in that category. Maybe it wasn't in the law, but it was an unspoken. And, in this January 2026, the FCC issued new guidance that narrows how it interprets. And they went after, if you remember, The View, also because of Tallarico. Now, there is not officially candidates in the election yet. Why? Because they haven't had primaries. So Colbert would have had to have Jasmine Crockett on, and he has. So I think this stuff
then
about...
why did she condemn him and call him a liar? This is a Democrat.
She's been on the show
issue.
twice. I don't know why. I honestly don't know why. Well, I don't know why. But
right.
Look,
well, you do know why. Because he's a liar.
No, I don't know. You know what? I don't think this is any different than the BS that was going on with Jimmy Kimmel. I think it's ridiculous.
So
and I think CBS, I think CBS, it should be ashamed of themselves. Not just for this, but for what's going on at CBS News. I mean, so much so that...
You can't stop talking about Barry Weiss, but Barry Weiss has nothing to do with...
No, I know she has. I said the larger CBS.
But that's
this is just a pattern of their own caving towards this administration.
Can I put this to you another way, which maybe
sure.
you will give me an inch?
Sure.
Brendan Carr, who is the head of the FCC, used to be a tribune of free speech and First Amendment rights. he has, since coming into the Trump administration, stopped being that guy.
Yes, he has.
He has become the Democrat that he condemned in the Biden administration, who wanted to interfere with the free speech rights of, for example, doctors who believed that masking was overdone, and other doctors who believed that schools should remain open. And of course, the Biden administration sought to suppress their
Did
free speech
censor. I
rights.
agree. I
Right?
agree.
And he criticized them for that and now has turned an about face. The problem here is that having been so hypocritical, Brendan Carr leaves himself open to accusations so that even when Brendan Carr is not at fault, and this was CBS News merely giving a legal advisory to Colbert, not CBS News, but CBS, the network,
CBS, the
to,
network.
to Colbert, that Brendan Carr gets blamed. And so he has opened himself up to this. So
That's fair. I'll give you an inch.
he has behaved badly and opened himself
I'll
up
give
to
you
this.
an inch, but here's a
Colbert is a
question. So,
loser who should be canceled
okay,
and a liar.
now they're investigating The View also for Tallarico. Here's a question. If he's going to start selectively applying it or applying this rule, is he going to go after Republican talk radio to put Democrats on?
No.
I hope. Look, I think people that are progressive should have Republicans on. People that are Republicans should have. I think. I don't think there should be, a no Democrats or no Republican rule anywhere. I think candidates should want to be everywhere, and that's my opinion.
I agree with that, although I wish there were some of them weren't candidates. But I'll tell you something.
That's something different.
This really does go to, and that is the very archaic government ownership of the airwaves. Because Republican talk radio is used to be on AM and FM. Now, for the most part, it's not. It's on satellite, and so
Oh, that's true.
That's not governed by the
Yeah.
FCC anymore, and so he can't go after.
No, that's a good point.
But it does raise this question, which is sort of like a libertarian one, which is why is the government in the business of ruling the airwaves? And honestly, guys, this is so far from my area of expertise that I will defer to somebody who sends me something smart about it, but I actually don't know. It just raises questions.
That's a good point about the satellite, like
it's a
Sirius XM and stuff.
It's a temptation. It's a temptation for government. The Bidens succumbed to it. Trump has succumbed to it, and it would be better to take temptation out of the way of politicians. So I think we agree about that.
Yeah. Just super quick. We seem to be always running out of time, so we'll try and
swearing. I also swore this time. So.
Yeah. No, you didn't. You didn't. You said you were going to swear. Oh, you did call someone an a-hole.
I did.
Who was it?
I don't remember. Oh, Colbert.
Oh. No, I think it was before Colbert. The Saudi UAE.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just take 2 minutes, but we'll dive in more another time. Especially with everything going on with Iran right now, it's troubling that these two Gulf neighbors seem to be in a very chilly relationship, and wouldn't say they were ever best friends, but they seem to, at least the UAE seems to really want a divorce right now.
I don't know. I mean, when we talked about the rise of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince and the de facto ruler of Saudi Arabia, we talked about him as being, someone who was tutored at the knee of MBZ, Mohammed bin Zayed, the leader of the United Arab Emirates. I think they were quite close. And, look, they're very different countries. The Emirates has always been a little bit ahead of Saudi Arabia. It's got a more diversified economy. They obviously have peace in there in the Abraham Accords. I don't buy that this is only about Yemen, though, and I think
I don't think so either. I think it's much more about the direction, and this is again going to take us in a larger. We should do a Middle East. We should do a Middle East special one time, but
maybe if we bomb Iran.
Yeah, I think the UAE is clearly moving more towards a Israel point of view in terms of how they view the region. Whereas the Saudis, are and you know what? I will say
I don't
though,
know, Elise. I think that might be tactical. I don't know that this
I
is
don't think so. I think, but you know what it does remind me of a little bit? I remember when Pakistan used to always go on, and I'm not comparing the UAE to Pakistan in terms of their values or their support for terrorism or any of that. But the Pakistanis are a smaller country. India is a much larger country. And the Pakistanis would always be India, 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 obsessed with India. And the Indians are like, okay, stop supporting terrorism. But other than that, like, we don't really, care.
yeah.
And it seems to be that the UAE is making a much larger deal about this than the Saudis are, is how I view it, I think.
Something, Alice, I want to understand this better, and
Yeah.
I really, actually, I am eager to do a kind of a special on the region and talk about this, and maybe we could invite somebody, one of our
Yeah.
dear
That would
friends,
be good.
to talk about it. And Gina, yay to bombing Iran, yay to getting rid of this regime, yay, yay, yay.
Listen,
So
we're going to start doing, we've talked about this. We would start doing more kind of special topic happy hours. So send us some comments
if people
or
volunteer.
ideas or topics which you'd like to see a half hour on or something like that.
And keep Dany away from talking about the FCC, about which she knows absolutely nothing. We have to say goodbye, baby. It's 6:13 in
Yes,
Washington,
yes.
D.C. Goodbye, everybody.
I
Thank
hope you
you
have a
all.
quiet if you're celebrating the Lunar New Year.
You're the
You're the
horse.
fire horse. You're the fire horse. And for Leos, it's sparking this like amazing period of amazingness. So I'm really excited about that. If you're celebrating Ramadan Kareem or Ramadan Mubarak, whatever you say. There's one other, it's the beginning of Lent. It's a very holiday-ish period, a very pious period. So I hope you have an easy weekend with no bombing.
Elise just wants us
And
to be after the State of the Union.
And I hope I hope that we all get to hear some, case laid out for why the president feels he has to do what he has to do. Anyway,
Take care, guys. Thanks for
namaste.
being with us. Namaste to you all.
Bye,
Ciao.
everybody. Ciao.
Bye.